VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And we thank you for joining us today here on the Crosstalk program over the VCY American Network as we daily confront the issues that are impacting us. Things sometimes that impact us spiritually, sometimes it's things that impact us politically or in the realm of just how we live in our communities. The issues that come before us, public policy-related issues and their impact upon our faith, our families, and our freedom. We're going to be discussing today, bringing back a topic that we brought before to you on the matter of Agenda 21. But today we're going to be discussing concerns that are growing over Agenda 21. We're going to be taking a look at how it's being infiltrated into the educational system. Also, we're going to be taking a look at what victories are taking place around the nation as well. Today on Crosstalk, we have two guests with us. Tom DeWeese, who is the founder and president of the American Policy Center and also editor of the DeWeese Report. And also with us today is Michael Chapman, the founder of American Heritage Research. He's also put together a 2-DVD set, Education for Sustainable Tyranny, the UN Agenda for America's Children. Tom, so nice to have you back here on Crosstalk.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
And Michael, welcome to you to join us here on the interview today. Michael, or let's start with you, Tom, if you would start off by just, again, redefining for us. Define what is Agenda 21. And for most people, if we go to our Webster's Dictionary and we look up Agenda 21, we're not really going to find much of an entry there. So let's start from scratch and share with us what is Agenda 21.
Well, Agenda 21, first of all, it came from the 1992 United Nations Earth Summit. It was one of about 4 documents that were produced at that massive summit where I think it was 172 world leaders were there. You had thousands of non-governmental organizations that were involved that are authorized by the UN. They had an agenda that they wanted to put together that literally was to transform human society along the basis of the environment and using the environment as the excuse to bring down what is top-down control of literally every aspect of our lives, from our private property and what we can do with it, to our energy use, to our water use, and how we grow our food, and every aspect of that. And it delves into population control, and and what we really are looking at here is a massive socialist scheme for redistribution of wealth. American wealth, first of all, the most powerful nation on earth, the wealthiest nation on earth. You've witnessed it over the last 20 years or so as the United States is beginning to diminish in our wealth, in our power, in our economy, and we're seeing jobs go overseas and so forth. That's all part of this global strategy to what they call harmonize the United States of America into the misery and pain of the rest of the world. And that's Agenda 21. So
what we're seeing today is actually on purpose?
Absolutely on purpose. They have this vision of the world, the idea, the old socialist idea that nobody can move forward until we can all move forward together in some kind of kumbaya hug. And, that's a utopian myth that does not exist. What it does is kill the human spirit, the individual spirit, and that's what we're seeing happening. You've got farmers who are being controlled in the way they can grow crops, even what crops they can grow, and it diminishes their ability to feed the rest of us. You've got energy prices that are skyrocketing out of control, gasoline heading towards $5 a gallon. All these are planned to get you out of your cars, and what they'd really like you to do is, if you have to go out of the neighborhood, then ride a bicycle.
Well, it sounds like the agenda of the current administration.
Absolutely.
Wow. And so we're seeing this manifested in not only on a national basis, but it's also getting down into the communities and states, isn't it?
Well, this is how it operates. These non-governmental organizations, this is key to understanding how this happens. These organizations, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Society, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI, were all there in 1992, and they helped write Agenda 21 with their own personal political objectives. They put it in there. Then, when this document was signed, in this case it was signed by George H.W. Bush in 92, saying, yeah, the United States would go along with this idea. From that point, 1993, President Bill Clinton, as president, signed an executive order to create the President's Council on Sustainable Development. On that council were some of the same people, the same NGOs that helped write Agenda 21 in the first place. They knew full well what the agenda was, and they, there they were serving on this committee to create this policy as American policy. They go into the Congress, they help write legislation, they create grant programs, they go into the state legislatures and they say, here's these grant programs that are available to you, we'll help you get them. Then they have the state legislation drawn up that says local communities have to put together comprehensive development plans. Then they go to the local communities and they say, we can get you grant money to help you do that, and that's how it gets from the United Nations into your backyard. The same NGO groups have guided this, steered it, herded it every step of the way.
And, Michael, as we take a look here at Agenda 21, it's not waiting until people actually are reaching adulthood. It's not waiting, just coming down through the legislative process. But you've been warning for several years now that the agenda of the UN is for America's children, and that includes the classroom. Tell us about what you've discovered and what you've been warning people about as it relates to the educational system and the promotion of Agenda 21.
Well, absolutely. You must understand what Tom just told you is absolutely true in education as well. The entire national standards movement came to us via non-government organizations that were part of some of these original agendas. And I date these back to 1972 in Minnesota, where I helped Michelle Bachman do a lot of research to expose this at the state level. And through our organization called EdWatch, which is now defunct, help fight and stop some of the agenda. However, it is a national movement, part of the Common Core standards, and is completely embedded in the education movement. In fact, 2005 through 2015 was named as the Decade of Education for Sustainable Development. And what we find is full participation from the State Department and the National Education Department.
Who named that decade as that?
Pardon me? Oh, that was named by UNESCO. And remember that under President Bush, we've rejoined UNESCO, and to quote him, said we will participate fully in UNESCO's agenda. Well, this is UNESCO's agenda, and UNESCO is the United Nations Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization. Call it the Global School Board. And through a series of non-government organizational contracts that came to the states via H.R. 6 and Goals 2000 back under President Bush Sr. And President Bill Clinton, and then again through No Child Left Behind under President Bush, and re-emphasized under President Obama, we have several funded non-government organizations who wrote the national standards for America's curriculum. We have the national standards in civic education through the Center for Civic Education. They won that grant, and they're still funded to the tune of millions through No Child Left Behind to put together the model curriculum. So what I actually discovered is that a lot of the curriculum was already embedded in our textbooks and curriculum since back in the 1980s. In fact, it was at the Sustainable Development World Commission on Environment and Development back in 1987 that the term sustainable development became connected to the redistribution of wealth, the sustainability of population, merging economic and environmental decisions into one, and that became the basis of our new school curriculum. Subjects, as we understand traditional subjects, became the carrier of the 10 principles of sustainable development back in Goals 2000, and all 50 states have now signed the contracts to bring into play these national agendas. Now, you have to understand, too, that even under President Obama, this agenda is full steam ahead, even though he's opted what he calls a waiver away from No Child Left Behind. The matter of fact is, Wisconsin, as a matter of fact, has applied for a waiver from No Child Left Behind. But the application is a 123-page document that is written by the U.S. Department of Education and the State Department in order to put in place and make sure that you have locked into the states these Common Core standards and the new national assessments, which are really the national test to make sure all children now think this way.
Is this coming by, Michael, is this coming by way of textbook? Is it coming by way of teachers' instructional material? How is it being conveyed to the young people?
All of the above. The new teacher licensing rules that are being passed systematically, state by state, are required for the waivers out of No Child Left Behind. The new assessments being in place are required in order to get a waiver from No Child Left Behind. You have to understand the No Child Left Behind is just the latest face and name on the Great Society under Johnson, which was the elementary and secondary education authorization. So all states are playing by those rules, and so you have a national standards that really a standard is nothing more than a national curriculum. At the event that we're going to be speaking at up in Wisconsin, I'm going to bring the evidence. I'm going to bring the documents. I'm going to show what the curriculum standards look like. I used to do textbook reviews years ago and started to recognize a common thread throughout every manufacturing or publisher of a textbook. I no longer have to do textbook reviews because all I have to do is review the national curriculum standards in every subject, and they're all exactly the same.
Well, Tom,
all 50 states are on board.
Tom, you've been, working with city councils and state legislatures and congressmen and senators. But if we're raising up just millions, in the crop of young people that are impacted in indoctrination in this regard, doesn't that ring warning bells to you?
Oh, absolutely. This is what makes it so difficult for us, because we're dealing with people who have been through this education curriculum now over the last really 20 years, who do not understand the concept of free enterprise or individual liberty or limited government, the Constitution and what it's all about. And that's why you're seeing today people just disregarding that. And they're trained in school to now just look at this urgency at the moment. Well, we got to deal with that. And don't worry about philosophy and economics or anything involved in that. So and we've got county commissioners now and city councilmen who've come through this curriculum who just look at us like we have two heads and don't understand what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So it's really having an effect, absolutely.
You're listening.
And at the same time, what's really made this difficult on the education side is not only now is the curriculum, but it was really under No Child Left Behind that we replaced academic tests and measures of knowledge with now assessments. Assessments are a measure of value. We assess your home for its value. We assess your property for its value. We now assess your children to determine that they now believe this new ideology. I give you one quick example in the area of economics. I'm
going to have you hold that, Michael, because we're at a break, but we'll get that example right after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America with concerns growing over Agenda 21. Guests are Tom DeWeese from the American Policy Center and Michael Chapman of the American Heritage Research. We'll be right back. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what is symbiosis?
Chris, this occurs when two animals, or maybe an animal and a plant, help each other to survive. Crab spiders are tiny white spiders which inhabit white flowers. When a bee comes to gather the nectar, thus fertilizing the flower, the spider snares it and eats it. The ultraviolet light that's given off by the spider attracts the bee to the flower, thus to his death. But actually, this is a three-way symbiosis. The spider gives off an ultraviolet signal which attracts the bee to come, which provides food for the spider, but more bees come and the flowers are fertilized and thus provide more food for the bee and the spider, and on and on. Such an intricate system could hardly be due to the result of evolutionary chance. Chris, God has seen to it that each created kind has perpetuated itself ever since back in Genesis.
For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
Are you folks aware of Agenda 21? Are you aware of how it's infiltrating your city governments and county governments and state governments? Are you aware of the rural councils that are being set up in the promotion of Agenda 21? Oh, you may not see them use those words, Agenda 21, but the philosophies and principles are very much underlying the direction in which many are taking the direction of our communities and our nation. And our schools as well. We're speaking today with Tom DeWeese, founder and president of the American Policy Center, and Michael Chapman of the American Heritage Research. And Michael, just before that break came upon us, you were just ready to provide an illustration for us to make us further aware of the point that you were driving home.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, education is a big part of the sustainable development curriculum, and the curriculum has been embedded in the textbooks for years and years. Now we have a national standard that requires all publishers of textbooks to conform to the same ideology, and we measure the success with new assessments that measure civic dispositions. That's by definition. The National Center for Education Statistics puts out a report called What Democracy Means to Ninth Graders. And just in the area of economics, they tell us that the percentage of ninth grade U.S. students reporting that economic-related actions should be government's responsibility include these frightening statistics. 84.2% of ninth graders now believe it's government's responsibility to set prices. 58.6% now believe it's government's responsibility to provide an adequate standard of living for the unemployed. And the most frightening of all is the redistribution of wealth. Government's responsibility, 63.5% of ninth graders assessed now believe that's government's responsibility. These are considered positive outcomes. We've heard the term outcome-based education. This is exactly what it means. What values, attitudes, beliefs, ideologies do we want our ninth graders moving into high school with the core base understanding that these things are government's responsibilities? It's the same in healthcare. It's the same in everything we're fighting in the adult world on the face of politics. The enemy has circled around behind us and are infiltrating our own schools with this propaganda so that our enemy in the future will be our own children.
Michael, I know you have just a couple minutes with us yet, and I wanted to ask you one further question, and that is, what advice do you have to parents to know whether or not their son or daughter is receiving such instruction? For instance, if a parent called up their school and talked to the principal and said, "Are you promoting Agenda 21?" The principal would probably say, "Huh?"
Exactly.
How does a parent find out?
Well, first of all, what you've got to know is it is in your child's school. It is in 100% of the public schools in America by federal mandate. Now, that there are 46 states that are fully participating. President Obama always talks about the other 4 getting on board. But in fact, the agenda is already present in the national, aligned with the states. You always hear the term alignment. When you're aligned with something, you're on the same road. So we have alignment between the international, the federal, the state, and the local curriculum and assessments.
And what are those 4 states?
I don't have the list right in front of me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm
Go ahead.
away from my desk, but I will bring those with me to the presentation. Now, just so that you know, the teachers are not the enemy. Most of the teachers are there for the right reasons. They really, truly want to educate our children. My wife is a public school teacher. But what has happened is they have divided this agenda into multiple pieces, like the pieces of a puzzle, and none of the teachers are privy to understand and see the picture on the box of the whole scope and sequence of what's being built. They're just programmed to put in their one piece of the puzzle. And there is some knowledge, there is some work, but I'm going to tell you right now, if your kids are learning in their schools, it's because the teachers have figured out clever ways to get around the agenda. And some of them don't even realize that's what they're doing. They're fighting things like fuzzy math, like whole language, and they're sneaking in pieces of basics, teaching the drills, even though Dr. William Glasser says drilling your children into the multiplication tables causes brain damage. They're putting in things like phonics because they're going around the system. So it's not the teachers who are the enemy. It's not even in some cases the principals. It is the agenda that has been foisted on us by the federal government.
And Michael, for those who'd like to be in contact with your organization, what's the best way?
Just go to my website, AmericanHeritageResearch.com. Frankly, I tell folks, I have a full-time job. This is a sideline hobby. I've been doing this for 25 years. So I'll try to get back to everybody as I can. To really fight the face of the agenda, you need to get into Tom DeWeese's. He's the only guy out there now that's really fighting this battle at a full-time level. Other folks like Dr. Michael Kaufman, who is exposing the fraud of the environmental movement from a postdoctorate juris degree in atmospheric research or whatever the heck he has. He's an excellent resource, Dr. Michael Kaufman with a C. There's other folks around fighting this piece by piece, but none better than Tom DeWeese.
And we appreciate you being with us, Michael. By the way, listeners, both Michael and Tom are going to be speaking in southeast Wisconsin this coming Saturday, March the 10th. There is a meeting that we've been made alerted to by the Rock River Patriots, a free event Saturday, March 10th, 6 p.m. at the Olympia Resort and Conference Center, 1350 Royal Mile Road in Oconomowoc. For more information, local listeners, you can call this number 920-650-1260. That's 920-650-1260. Michael, thanks for carving some time out of your busy day schedule to join us here on this portion of Crosstalk.
Thank you. Looking forward to being there. I'll see you all in Wisconsin.
Bye-bye now.
Saturday.
Okay, that was Michael Chapman with us. Tom DeWeese continues on. And Tom, as we've been listening to this, is the promotion of Agenda 21, is this a partisan issue? Is this something both Republicans and Democrats have been pushing?
No, this is about as bipartisan or nonpartisan as you can get. It is as I said, George H.W. Bush signed us onto this. Bill Clinton put together the President's Council. George W. Bush probably did more to implement Agenda 21 than any president since it's been come together. So Republicans and Democrats alike have been putting this in place step by step by step. So they're both guilty.
Now, I understand, I recently was made aware that the Republican National Committee in just recent weeks approved a resolution exposing Agenda 21 and planning to recommend this as part of the party platform?
They did. This was a huge victory, and it has become very useful as we've gone into offices of local Republican elected officials who sit there and look at it and say, I don't know what you're talking about, what's Agenda 21, never heard of it, and try to dismiss us. They've been trying to dismiss us for years as kooky conspiracy theorists. We pull out this resolution from the Republican National Committee, and they go, oh, maybe I better take another look at this. So it is helping immensely. It was a huge victory to get that done.
Is the public awakening to the perils of Agenda 21? And beyond just the general public, our governmental bodies, are they awakening to the perils of Agenda 21?
Yeah, they sure are. I've been working on this issue since 1992, trying to alert people to it, tell what was wrong, why it was such a danger. And for the most part, particularly in the cities, people were not hearing us because they weren't seeing it happen to them or they weren't aware of it. And of course, as Michael just showed, what's going on in the education curriculum is like this cancer that's creeping through there, almost unseen. But in the last year and a half, maybe almost 2 years, it has absolutely exploded. I could be working on all kinds of issues and have no idea what my impact is on because so many other people are working on it. But this is one. I know exactly the impact we're having because I saw we spoke to empty halls across the country. And that is now changing. It is rapidly going through the Tea Party movement. Instead of 100 people or 50 people in an audience, we're getting 200, 300, 400, 800 people that are coming in. For the first time ever, we are getting elected officials calling us and asking for help. I had Newt Gingrich's campaign call me because he was getting pummeled on the campaign trail about Agenda 21, and when he gave his lame excuses or answers for it, they kept saying, call Tom DeWeese. So he did. And, now he's talked about it. Even in debates, he talked about it on Sean Hannity's radio show. So that was a huge step forward. Glenn Beck has done a huge amount of it. I was attacked on the front page of the New York Times just recently The whole gist of that article was, here are all these professional planners just hardworking, trying to do their job, and all these protesters are just wasting their time. And they gave me credit for all that. I was happy for that.
Say, Tom, just 1 hour before I walked in the studio, we received a press release, and the title caught my attention. Senator Herb Kohl, he's a Democrat, Congressman Tom Petri, a Republican, introduced legislation to designate the Fox, Wisconsin Heritage Parkway as a national heritage area. They're going to be taking parts of 15 counties throughout the state of Wisconsin, marking the path of Marquette and Joliet through Wisconsin to the Mississippi River, and to designate this as a national heritage area. Is this tied into Agenda 21?
Yeah, it sure is. They will use any excuse they can to control land. That's number one. One of the aspects of Agenda 21 is called the Wildlands Project, and this comes out of the UN's Biodiversity Treaty. And what it calls for is locking away 50% of all the land in every single state, rewilding it back to the way it was when Christopher Columbus discovered America. And so, how do you do that? And we've got things like rails to trails and wetlands regulations and that sort of thing. But national heritage areas are a major source for this. And the reason why, one of the things is they take conservatives who love our heritage, who love our history, want to honor what happened here in the past, and they use that as an excuse. We'll hear historic preservation and heritage areas used all the time. That really is used to kind of sucker the conservatives into buying it. And these heritage areas are a major tool for that. They'll tell you all they want to do is just honor a historic thing that happened there. But here's why it's such a bad thing. If they just wanted to put together a resolution and say, we honor what happened in such and such area, fine, do it. That can help tourism, that can help the Chamber of Commerce, that sort of thing. And that's what they say they're doing. But what happens is they put together millions of dollars that is run through the National Park Service. The National Park Service takes that money and it doles it out to who? The non-governmental organizations, these NGOs, the same ones that helped write Agenda 21, the same ones who know what this agenda is all about, what the goal is, and they will systematically use that money to begin to indoctrinate the community, to begin to get city councils, county commissioners to designate areas that are literally lock away land so it can't be used, stop certain industries from coming in, that sort of thing. That's how they use it, and that's why it's so dangerous.
Now, in this press release, and they address the National Park Service, saying it's not going to be managed by the National Park Service, but it's going to, have a structure for residents, nonprofit organizations, and businesses to work together. Is that the NGOs you were talking about?
Isn't that what I just said?
Yeah.
Exactly what I said.
Wow.
And that's how it operates.
It's as current as 1 hour before the program, that press release coming to us here at Crosstalk. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick 60-second break, but let's open the phone lines as well. If you have questions, if you have a comment you'd like to make here pertaining to Agenda 21, get on board right now, 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Perhaps something's happening in your community. We'll be right back.
Are you on death row? One Christian film producer says everybody is. Every one of us will one day die. Then what? In a heart-stirring 30-minute DVD, film writer, producer, and director Dave Cristiano has released a penetrating on-stage drama that takes you inside a prison cell and captures the life of a man on death row who knows that in less than 3 hours he will die. Convicted of murder, he sits angry, guilty, and scared. At his request for a preacher, the two engage in a soul-searching conversation that is forever impacting. As an evangelistic tool, VCY America is making available Death Row, encouraging you to share with unsaved friends and loved ones. One copy is available for a donation of $8, or you can obtain a 4-pack of the Death Row DVDs for a donation of $20. This offer will expire at the end of March. To make your donation by phone, call 1-800-729-9829 and specify whether you want 1 or 4 Death Row DVDs. That's 1-800-729-9829.
Concerns are growing over Agenda 21 in every aspect of this nation. I mean, it's infiltrated in the educational system. You heard that firsthand from Michael Chapman. Again, his website, AmericanHeritageResearch.com. And I also, as Michael pointed out, I know of nobody who's making this their full-time vocation, as Tom DeWeese is here, founder and president of the American Policy Center. And Tom's website is AmericanPolicy.org. And right at the top of the page, he has something called Issues. And at the top of the issues, folks, you'll find Agenda 21. And Tom, you put together just a tremendous informational piece to alert people to what Agenda 21 is, its dangers, how it's being infiltrated into every facet of society. And people really need to read that, don't they?
They do. And I'll tell you what else. Just tomorrow, we're going to announce the creation of a Stop Agenda 21 action kit that I've been working on for months with a lot of the experts around the country that I work with, including Michael Chapman. It covers every aspect of this. It's got DVDs in it. It's got presentations. It's got workshops. It's got manuals that tell you everything you need to know to fight back on this. It's coming out tomorrow. You go to our website by then, and you'll be able to just click on it, and you can purchase it there if you want. AmericanPolicy.org is a website.
Well, I've got more questions, but you know what? Our lines are packed here with listeners, and we're going to get you on board here with Tom DeWeese. We're going to begin in Colorado Springs. Michael, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Back in the late 1990s in Oregon, we had a program that was trying to get into the educational system called the Rainbow Curriculum. Is there any relationship to this?
Well, it's all based on, as Michael said, the changing the attitudes, values, and beliefs of the children away from what the parents have taught them, and attitudes about love of country and love of God and that sort of thing. And their multiculturalism, all that kind of thing, has been used to direct them in that direction. So, yeah, I can't answer exactly that. Michael could, but...
That's what they were saying. They were basically going to this faith-based education way back in the 70s. How come the American people are so behind at times? I knew about this 25 years ago.
People are so busy trying to have two parents work to pay their taxes and keep their families together and move forward. They haven't got time to look at what's causing them to have to do that. And I think that's by design as well.
Michael, thanks for your call from Colorado Springs. And Tom, just to clarify, you're not saying love of God and love of country is wrong, are you?
No. What I was saying was that's the changing of the values, attitudes, values, and beliefs of the children. That's the outcome that they desire. If the parents taught their children to love their family, to always respect their family, to love God, to love their country. Actually, I forget the gentleman's name now, but one of the main instructors in this who taught other, the curriculum, said children who believe those things are sick. It's our job to heal them.
Wow. And let's hug a tree instead. Century, Florida. Maxine, you're on the air.
Okay. A lady told me several months ago that her child was doing real good in spelling. And she said, look at this. She said, they don't spell like we used to. They teach them to spell like the word sounds. And I said, no, that's not right. I said, that will confuse them. Yeah. She said they can change it later on. Would that be connected with the Agenda 21?
Absolutely. There was a teacher in Alexandria, Virginia, who was an old-style teacher, one who really taught children academics. And the children were going through these kind of classes, learning to spell that way, and he couldn't read their papers and so forth. So that one day he put the assignment on the blackboard for the next day, written the way they were writing things, the way they had been taught. And all the kids said, I can't read it, I don't understand it. He says, now you know how I feel. These teachers like that are being discarded, gotten rid of, and children, how in the world can children learn anything if they can't even understand what the words are, and everything is done by the way they feel? That there's no right or wrong. It's just, is it right for you? That's another thing that they're taught. All this is what this does is make the children pliable. It makes them susceptible for authority to take over and lead them by the nose, and makes them the perfect global village idiot, is what it boils down to.
Maxine, thank you for your call. Bye-bye now. Our number, 800-733-9829. Let's go next to Port Huron, Michigan. Harry, you're on the air.
Hey, thanks, fellas. And Tom, I've got a question going right back to the property rights issue. We've got a problem here in our county. They want to build a convention center, and they want to build it for big business and conventions, and they say it's going to bring jobs, et cetera. But property owners are going to be affected, possibly, and I'm looking for, do you have an attorney or know of an attorney that fights eminent domain?
Now, this is the biggest problem that we have, because there are so many legal fights that need to be fought, and there are so few that are available out there to do the fight. And, the name of one of the organizations that's doing a great job has just eluded me at the moment.
Understand.
But there are some foundations that do that. But the problem is that they have to restrict what they do in many cases to taking a precedent-setting case so that it affects and helps a lot more people than just
you betcha.
One case. Yeah.
Well, if you find one, if you find one in the next 20 minutes, I'd love to hear a name or a contact, because we definitely might have some people here that would love to work with them.
Okay, my brain is working.
And Harry, you may even try a group like Liberty Counsel and call them. They may know of, somebody will specialize. I know they've been involved in some of the eminent rights issues there, but
super.
But certainly give them a call, and they may have a referral for you,
Thank
too.
you a lot, guys.
Bye-bye now. To Burlington, Wisconsin. Christy, you're on the air.
Hi there. I just wanted to express my personal experience with the National Park Service and how lousy they are. My in-laws bought an island up in International Falls on Rainy Lake back in the 70s. When it became a national park, Voyagers National Park, we lost it because they want to restore it back to, natural, all woods, what have you. Well, what they did is they started renting out houseboats to any yahoo. You don't need a license. What do people on houseboats do? They litter. They play loud music. They cause fires. We that own the islands and have beautiful cabins, we took care of it, and it's just a baloney. It just angers me when I hear that. It's not about restoring the earth back to its natural. It's about power, absolute power.
Yeah, we've had so many cases. The National Park Service is a very lousy neighbor. And I know on the New River down in West Virginia, Hinton, West Virginia, people wanted their road repaired down there several years ago. And all of a sudden they announced, they're going to make it a scenic highway. And the National Park Service involved, they had people there who lived along the river that had, rental boats and that sort of thing. Those were all going to be put out of business. The private business was going to be put out of business, and the Park Service was going to run it. What they do in parks around the country, they will not allow any of the dead wood from dead trees to be taken from the ground. And they say, well, that's all natural. Well, what it does is it builds up foot after foot of kindling on the floor of the forest, and that's why the forests are burning so hot now, and you end up with more destruction of forests rather than better, and more dead animals. And this is a lousy way to take care of our forests, and yet they say, well, it's all natural, and they're just helping the environment. It's very bogus.
It's a bunch of baloney. No, these people that rent houseboats, and like you said, the government was running these little businesses out that were renting houseboats, and it got to be so many houseboats it was ridiculous. You used to see just a few here and there, and that poor lake was littered with houseboats with people that don't care anything about environment. All they were doing is lining the pockets of our lousy government and the National Park Service. That's all. Thank
you, Christy, for your comment here today. Our number, 800-733-9829, next to Waterford. And Michelle, you're on the air.
Hello. My question is, in my niece's public school, there's talk of getting rid of cursive writing. Is this part of Agenda 21?
Well, again, it's all designed to change the curriculum and take away the academics of writing. I mean, of course, they'll use the excuse, well, you can use your computer now, and you don't need to learn how to write and so forth. What you end up with people who are incapable of communicating with each other. They can't spell. If they write it, you can't read it. we still need to have the academics, the basic academics, in order to to have a full education. Then you can move there. See, here's what happens: if they contain the little bit of education you have, then you are being trained to just do a job. If you have a full academic background, then when new technology comes out, new jobs come out, you can adapt to that on your own. But the other way, you are controlled, and that is exactly what the purpose of it is, so that you become very adaptable to fit in wherever they need you to fit in.
Michelle, thanks for your call. How's the fight going on the light bulbs, preserving the incandescent light bulb, Tom?
Well, it's good and bad. We did get some legislation that took away the funding for them to take away, starting out with a 100-watt incandescent bulb, and so we got the right to continue to have 100-watt incandescent bulbs. The problem is that they had let it go so far by that point that the companies that manufacture them had already started to shut down the factories making them, and they're already fully committed to putting those green things together that nobody wants. And so, that I was in Home Depot the other day, and they had a whole supply of 100-watt bulbs. I'm not sure what that was about, if they're just getting rid of what they had or they're starting to make them again. I took it as an encouraging sign and bought a bunch of them, but, that's,
I mean, their next step was to get rid of the 75-watters then, too?
Yeah, they were going to just incrementally, they start with 100-watt and get rid of 75 watts and 60-watt and go down over time. That way they don't have riots on their hands. They do it slowly, and that's another reason why people don't see this, because they start selling it, and to the people it's propaganda, and you don't feel the pain immediately. If you ban something right this minute, you feel it, and people understand it. But if you just do it a little bit incrementally, people just kind of work into it.
Like the frog in the pot.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
Bill in Sarasota, Florida, you're on the air.
Thank you. Hello. I just have an observation. What we're experiencing now is a dumbing down of America. The fact of the matter is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Whether it's light bulbs or whether it's educational system, the students aren't failing the system. It's the system that's failing the student. Yeah. You get kids that are getting out of high school today that can't spell resume, let alone prepare one. And computers are not going to be the answer. It would take just one simple atmospheric detonation of a nuclear device, and it'll take the electric chip to throw it out the window. We'll be back in horse and carriage.
Thank you, Bill, for your comment. Tom, is the system failing our kids in this regard?
Oh, absolutely. I have seen, and I know teachers, and particularly I have a friend who is a very strong activist in our movement who's a substitute teacher. And she tells stories of how she goes into these classrooms when, she's substituting, and she'll start teaching the children how to make flashcards, and she'll teach some other things. And they love it, and they get into it and get excited about it.
Wow. Thank you for the call here, Bill. We have another break and also a couple open lines here if you'd like to speak with Tom DeWeese today about Agenda 21, the growing concern, what you can do, how can you stop it in your community. Our number 800-733-9829. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. Romans 1:23 tells us that one of the signs that God has given a nation over is that they begin to take the incorruptible God and make him like the corruptible man. We see in 2 Thessalonians 2:9-11 that there will be a strong delusion during the last days. We see in 1 Kings chapter 22:19-23 that when people follow false teachers and false gods, God actually allows demons to speak through those false gods, making people believe that their gods are really real. We see in 1 Kings chapter 22, God permitting 400 demons to go into 400 false prophets and then speak like they had authority in order to do what? To destroy the people. In other words, God uses false teachers, false prophets, and false gods and allows the demons to take part in that in order to bring judgment for their idolatry. Indeed, I believe God's judging America, but we can use it to proclaim the gospel.
And for those of you in southeast Wisconsin, a reminder that our guest today on Crosstalk, Tom DeWeese and Michael Chapman, who is with us for the first half hour today, are going to be speaking this weekend. As a matter of fact, we have a word here from the Rock River Patriots that are bringing these gentlemen in to speak at their meeting Saturday, March 10th, 6 p.m., at the Olympia Resort and Conference Center in Oconomowoc. Admission there is free. They want you to get the information, become informed on this, and here's a number for more information, 920-650-1260, 920-650-1260. Tom, were you able to dust off some cobwebs here on that legal foundation that could help that previous caller?
Yes. The Institute for Justice, for one, it's located in Washington, D.C. They've done some terrific work in defending people on particularly eminent domain type issues. There's also the Pacific Legal Foundation out in, I think they're in Oregon or Washington, I forget which.
Okay.
But you can find them on the internet, Pacific Legal Foundation, and there are other ones that work on that, but those are two of the most prominent ones, particularly the Institute for Justice.
Let's get back to the phone lines here. Norman is calling from Greenfield, Wisconsin. You're on the air, Norman.
Yes, I would like to ask Tom how the ethanol thing plays in the big picture. The last I heard, over 50% of our corn production was going into ethanol, and Obama wants to shoot it up from 10% to 15% of the amount that you put into a gallon of fuel. Obviously, food prices are skyrocketing, so I'll hang up and listen to his answer.
Thank you, Norman.
Well, again, this is controlling the food supply, and everything connected with Agenda 21 leads to higher prices and shortages and sacrifice, and I can't say that enough, and that is exactly what we're looking at here. This is these public-private partnerships between government and private companies, which is nothing but government-sanctioned monopolies. They get all kinds of perks and grants and special privileges, and they work directly with the government, and creating ethanol is one of those things. Under Sustainable Development and Agenda 21, the government refuses to allow the drilling of American oil, which we have probably in more abundance than anywhere else in the world, and so they're trying to band-aids to try to find ways environmentally correct to give us some kind of energy, and ethanol is one of those. It's not desirable. It's not a good thing. It's making the cost of food rise, and all we've got to do is open some oil wells and drill American oil, and we don't have to deal with all that. You'll see all these prices come plummeting, oil prices, corn prices, everything, but this is what happens when government tries to control the economy.
So there's no accident why that Keystone Pipeline is not being advanced either right now.
Absolutely. The goal here is to get you out of your cars. Under Agenda 21, Sustainable Development Practices, what they want to do is create little communities, little neighborhoods where you literally never leave that neighborhood. Your job is there, your home is there, your recreation is there, so you're not driving your car anywhere. And what they've done then is limited your transportation, your ability to move around. That's not freedom. And but they'll sell it as a quaint little thing. Well, if you're sitting in a traffic jam in the middle of the city in a crowded road, that might sound kind of good to you at the moment. Gee, I wish I were home now. But you think about it, you think where that's taking you, and only having public transportation to move out of where you are limits your ability to move, and that has government controlling your ability to move.
Let's go back to the lines here. Jim in Milwaukee, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. I hope what I say makes sense to you and your guests and the audience that's listening. It's obvious right on the face of this that this is what all this is unconstitutional. I guess involvement with other nations, specifically the UN, into our country. Mm-hmm. About 2 weeks ago, I heard Paul Ryan say something. We all know who Paul Ryan is, and we think he's a great conservative, and I do too. But what he said was just kind of disturbing how he said it. He said that we have to give the American people a choice between what Barack Obama wants to present and what we want to present. And I'm thinking, there is no choice. We have a constitution. We have a law that both parties are supposed to follow, and it's agreement with our government and the people. And when the government doesn't follow it, they need to be dealt with, either thrown out of office or, I guess, impeached and thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm. Good thought. So often we just throw out the Constitution as being an option for the country when instead it is the standard by which this country needs to operate. Thanks for raising that point here, Jim. Shirley in Florida, you're on the air.
I'd like to ask one question when listening to all this. Why do Christian parents send their children to schools that teach something they do not want them to believe or believe themselves? I wouldn't send my children down to a local bar and tavern 5 nights a week to learn what the world's about when I don't want them to learn that. So why do we send them there? That's my question.
Thank you. I don't know that I don't have an answer for you, Shirley.
There are a couple of reasons for that. One is economics, because to send them to a private school costs money while they're still being taxed for the public schools, and they don't have a choice of that. The other reason is that they aren't aware. They don't know what's going on there. These guys are insidious. They use institutions that we have trusted forever, and then suddenly different things are happening out of those institutions. And when people like me come along and say, "Wait a minute, you don't want to trust what the YWCA is teaching your children, or you don't want to trust the Chamber of Commerce or what it's doing," I mean, people say, "What are you, nuts? You can't." This has been around for centuries. Well, yeah, but now you've got new people with new curriculums involved and new agendas, and so it's very difficult to grasp that everything around you is changed and is dangerous to the idea that if you believe in limited government and free enterprise and individual liberty and so forth, then you are the crackpot now, not the norm, and that's what's happening to us.
Mike and Franklin, time for a quick question here.
Hi, I'm calling from Franklin, Wisconsin. My question is, this is a divorce remarriage situation. I have 3 stepchildren who come home from school and tell me, I don't have to listen to you, you're not my dad, you can't discipline me. Is that part of the Agenda 21?
I don't know that there is a tie with that there, Tom.
Well, it's definitely part of that curriculum, as Michael was explaining, the change in the curriculum. You will actually, I've seen textbooks, for example, a health textbook that has in it a hotline, a child abuse hotline, that the children are told, if your parents try to punish you or do this or do that, they have examples, call this hotline, turn in your parents.
Wow. Hey, our time has gone, Mike. Thanks for raising the issue. Apologize to you, Morris, for not being able to take your call. The website is AmericanPolicy.org, AmericanHeritageResearch.com. Tom, thanks for being with us. Trust you have a good speaking engagement this weekend.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Tom DeWeese has been with us here from the American Policy Center, growing concerns over Agenda 21. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for